Hello and welcome back to another Java tutorial. Today we are going to be going over the break and continue statements in Java. We kind of we used the break statement in one of my earlier videos when we were using the switch statements, so you can check that video out. But I didn't really go too much in depth into that. So I thought I'll make a separate video explaining the break and the continue statements on their own. So the break statement basically it allows you to essentially jump out of a loop. So for example, let's say we have a while loop. For example, so let's just do it. Let's make a counter. So we do int I is equal to 0, and then let's have a while loop. So while I is less than 10, 10, we'll loop this code in here until I is no longer less than 10. So then let's say we want to print out every single value. Let's print out I. Let's run this quickly, and obviously I forgot to do something. We need to increment the counter that we have, so we'll do a I++, and yeah, it will print out all values from 0 to 9. But now let's say we want to break out of this loop early on, so we don't want to finish off this whole condition. So let's say we want to stop at like 5, for example. So we'll add an if statement here. We'll do if, there we go, if I is equal to, let's go, if I is equal to 5. So we want to stop after 5. So if I is equal to 5, we will break out of that. And if we run this, you can see it will stop at 5. So what happens here is we have a loop that will loop 10 times, and it will print out the value I, the counter, every single iteration, and then we will increase our counter by 1 every single iteration. Now when we get to 4, it will print out 4, and then we will increment our counter by 1, so this I becomes 5. When I is equal to 5, we will break out of this loop. So you can see we no longer print out anything after 5. Now we can change this, we can do 7. So once we print out 6, and then that gets incremented to 7, this condition here will be true, and then we will break out of this while loop here, just like so. You can use for loops as well, you can use while do loops, and so on. So that's what break is. Pretty straightforward. Now I'm going to go over the continue. The continue is a bit different. What I'm going to do instead, I'm going to move this after the if. And what we're going to do is, instead of the break, we're going to do continue. So what does it do for us? Let's disregard this if statement here. So imagine this doesn't exist. I'll comment out for a second. What do we do? It's the exact same thing. We print out all values from 0 to 9. And then we increment it by 1, the counter. And then we just print it out, and then we just keep going. Now if we have this in here, once we reach 7, we're going to continue this while loop, which means is we're going to go to the next iteration. We're going to not jump out of this loop. So with the break statement was we jumped out of this while loop. So we just move on to the next line of this while. We no longer execute any more iterations of this while loop. The continue statement is once we reach the continue, all of the code after it, so any code that we might have like in here, will no longer get executed, or even in here. And what we'll do is we'll just move on to the next iteration. So it basically skips the iteration 7. So if we print this out, you can see we have 0 and it goes all the way to 7 or all the way to 6. And then we just continue on. Alright? We don't actually do anything. Now the thing is, we do need to have something else in here though. We need to have the I++ time because we still need to increment the counter. If we run this now, you can see we have the first 6 or the first 7, sorry, are normal because I is not equal to 7. So we'll just print out the counter, the I, and then we just increment it. Once we reach 7, we'll increment it anyways. So this will become 8. But then we'll do continue. When we do continue, any other code that was supposed to get executed will no longer get executed, and we'll just move on to the next iteration. So, for example, we have iteration 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Once we reach 6, right, it will print out 6, but then it will print 7. So I is now equal to 7. Now, because this is true, I is equal to 7, we'll increment that anyway to 8, so we can just continue on. But because we have the continue statement, we're going to jump from 6, we're going to stop any code that we have, and we're going to jump to the next iteration, which is 8, and we're just going to continue the while loop as normal. We can have a second one in here, so let's say we have another one. Let's change this to if else, but then let's have another one before that. We'll have an if I is equal to 2. Remember, we need to increment that anyways, and then we'll just do continue, like this. And this is actually an else if, sorry, not an if else. Now what we're saying is, if I is equal to 2 or 7, we'll increment that anyway because the loop needs to continue, but we're not going to execute any more code. We're just going to jump to the next iteration. So we print this out. You can see, what do we get? Get 0, 1. We don't get 2 because if it's equal to 2, we're just going to continue. We won't bother printing out this statement here. Now, what I did before, if you might have noticed, I didn't have the I++. The reason why this will no longer work is because what happens here is it's basically like an endless loop in a way. What happens here is once this reaches to 2, we'll continue, so we'll skip this iteration, we won't do any of this, and we'll move on to the next iteration. The problem is we never increment our counter, which means I is going to stay equal to 2. And when we do the next iteration, I is still 2 because we never incremented it. So it's going to go and do this again because this is still true. So it's going to continue again. So whenever we do this, we must have the I++ before it, because we have after it, for example. After it doesn't really make sense, and we get an error anyway because this code is, we call it, it's non-reachable code. This code will never get executed because this code here will just disregard any code that we have after this statement, and we'll move on to the next iteration. So it'll basically bring you back to the very start and it'll start executing again. So this code will never get executed. This code will get executed only if this condition is true or false. So when this is true, we'll continue, and any code after this will not get executed. So we need to make sure any code that we need, it needs to be before to continue. So it goes the same way with the break statement. So if we have, well, the break, we don't actually need the I++ here because we're going to be breaking out of this while loop anyway. So even with the I++ or the increment, we can have it here, but this will not really do anything. Unless we need to use this value outside of our while loop, then we need to keep it in. But besides that, we don't need to have the I++ in here when we use the break statement. If we're using the continue statement, then we do need to use that in there. And that's basically it for the break and continue statements. They're pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to test out yourself as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.